Hi, everyone. Welcome. Thanks for joining us today. And I wanted to just take a moment and introduce myself. I'm Jeannie Reed. I do the marketing here at GIG. And GIG is a nonprofit organization. We've been around since 1974. We start off as a small support organization and have grown into a large support organization. We have over 90 support groups throughout the country and even some internationally. And we are very fortunate today to have two leaders from our support groups who are going to be talking to us today, as well as our on-staff RDN. So I am going to just ask everyone to introduce themselves, and I will start with Dr. Deena Abbe.
Hi, my name is Dr. Deena Abbe. I am a child psychologist here in Long Island in New York. I have 4 children. My third son and I are both gluten-free, celiac disease, and I'm a group leader on Long Island. Our group spans, I don't know if you guys know Long Island, but it spans all the way. We have people from the Hamptons and all the way to Queens, so it's a pretty large geographic area. I, as a psychologist, specialize in children who have metabolic disorders and feeding concerns, feeding issues, as well as children who are behaviorally challenged.
Excellent.
Hi, I'm Dr. Lisa Shaver, and I am a naturopathic physician and acupuncturist here in Portland, Oregon at Hive Mind Medicine, and I specialize in digestive disorders, autoimmune disorders, and also specifically celiac disease and non-celiac gluten sensitivity. I am gluten-free. I have non-celiac gluten sensitivity, and I have been a branch manager of the local group, GIG, or what we call GIG, of Portland for over 10 years, and I've been gluten-free for about 15 years. I do telemedicine with my patients now, since it is a time of work from home. And I also do educational consults with people outside of Oregon, especially during this COVID time, to help people and guide people and make recommendations that they can bring to their own physicians where they live in the United States, but also internationally. And Dr. Abbe, I think you mentioned that you do telemedicine these days.
I do, especially these days. The states have opened up their restrictions, and so there's reciprocity. So I'm seeing people through telemedicine and through telehealth right now. So yeah, that's the way everybody, I think, is doing it at the moment.
Yeah. And Jean, thank you so much for having us. This is just going to be so much fun. I can't wait.
Yeah, we're looking forward to it. Thanks.
Thank you both so much for being here. And Lola, do you want to take a moment and introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm Lola O'Rourke. I'm a dietitian here at GIG. I've been gluten-free for about 20 years. And basically what I like to bring to GIG is I like to help people learn how to still enjoy food, eat healthfully, and stay safely gluten-free at the same time.
And Lola, I love your Ask the Dietitian question and response that you post on the gluten intolerance group main page. I just love those.
Good.
Thank you.
I do too. Yeah, I think that's really a fun thing. It definitely covers all those frequently asked questions. You guys have such great answers, Lola.
Yeah.
All right, so this is a challenging time, and I think everyone is learning to adjust to the new normal, and I would love to just kind of open up the floor and ask you both about coping with this pandemic and, you know, the challenges that being gluten-free presents, and just your thoughts on it and how people can kind of get through this time.
Dr. Abbe, as a psychologist, why don't you start?
Oh, thanks. Sure. So I think everybody kind of, first off, certainly as adults and parents, we need to drop our expectations. I have so many parents who are coming to me saying, my children aren't behaving and they're not listening and we're not getting together and all I expect is family time. And oftentimes that's not realistic. So we need to drop our expectations for that. That's really important. And you know, if our basic needs are getting met, then we're good. And our children's basic needs are getting met, then that's good. Following that, making sure that all of our health needs are met, right? But also our emotional needs. So if that means connecting with people via Zoom, if that means going for a walk or a run and being, I guess, as physically active as we're able to be, that's really important. But we shouldn't lose sight of the emotional connection that we need with people. It's just terribly important. Also remember that gluten-free bread doesn't rise and react the same. So when we're all trying to, to make these sourdoughs and whatnot, it may not work. Have some patience with yourself.
Yeah, I echo everything that Dr. Abbe said. And I just want to touch on the physical part. So I've been doing telehealth visits with all of my patients, many of whom have celiac disease, non-celiac gluten sensitivity, other autoimmune conditions. And some people are complaining about being more constipated these days. And movement, physical activity, and the digestive tract and our mental health are intimately linked. Now you might be thinking, I'm not constipated, it's the opposite. Well, our brain and our bodies, as again, are intimately linked. And whenever there's tension and a stressor, it tells the body, let's get rid of what's in our body. Let's get rid of what's in our digestive tract because we need to survive. Forget about absorbing what was eaten this morning and digesting this morning, because the body shunts its blood to the arms and to the legs so we can fight or flee. So that's fight or flight. And you could have, on a regular basis, more loose stools. That's quite possible during this time. But if you're on the harder stools, hydration, I know I have a routine in my office where I have certain clues in my conversations with patients when I'm in person that helps me sip throughout the day. And my bladder is sort of timed to go to the bathroom every 2 hours, which is a goal for all of us. But if I'm doing telehealth and I'm trying to chart between patients, I don't have a stand up, shake hands, say goodbye, or with some patients hug and say goodbye. I don't have that anymore. So I'm on the screen and then it leads to another screen, and I'm not drinking as much. And if you don't drink as much and you're dehydrated, that can lead to constipation. So there are definitely, movement is tied to the digestive tract. We have better bowel movements when we move and better bowel movements when we stay hydrated. People who do public speaking will say, every single time I need to get up on that stage, my body says, oh, no, you don't. You need to run to the bathroom. And they either have to urinate or they have a loose stool. And that's totally normal for that sort of stage fright, fight or flight, fear of speaking, that overwhelming, what we call sympathetic dominance briefly until they get up on the stage and get going. So movement to help the bowels, that's super important. If you're concerned that your body is behaving differently during this time, so it could be tension in the brain or simply you're sitting more. And so I concur with Dr. Abbe about moving is so important for your body, but also so importantly, our mental health.
Yes.
So Dr. Shaver, you're saying one thing, some of these symptoms that, for instance, someone with celiac disease under normal circumstances might think could be caused by inadvertent gluten consumption could just be stress related or related to our different patterns of activity.
Absolutely, absolutely. So dehydration leads to constipation, lack of movement leads to dehydration. We can have stressors or tension leading to softer stools or loose stools or frankly diarrhea. So making sure if you have a counselor to be checking in with your counselor, or if you have a spiritual practice to be engaging in that spiritual practice, if you have best friends you like to get together with, say your church is going out hiking, find a local park and do some laps, find a tree-lined street, and don't focus on the cars and the pavement and the houses. Focus on the spring flowers and the trees and the cats and the dogs, and focus on the positive, as we know that, and Dr. Abbe can speak to this more, but there's so many pieces of research that just seeing green trees helps reduce our stress and increase our positive neurotransmitters that make us feel good and enjoy life and want to participate in life.
Absolutely. The more we can get outside, the better off we are emotionally, the better off we are physically. It's really important to be able to do that. And just to kind of echo what Dr. Shaver said, there are a lot of apps out there for meditation. I'm a huge, huge mindfulness fan. I teach it even to little kids. And it's not anything wacky or crazy. It doesn't have to be a spiritual thing. It's really just being able to be in the moment and teaching your brain how to focus in the moment for where you are and for what you're doing. And we have a lot of data also that shows that it just calms down our central nervous system. And when our central nervous system is calmed down, our body and our metabolic system is calmed down, and we feel better. So it's really important, especially in this time of high tension and high stress, to know how to do that.
I agree. One of my favorite apps for meditation, and they guide you through in tiny little increments day by day, is called Headspace.
Oh, I love Headspace.
And currently, this year, Headspace is offering a free subscription for the year to any medical personnel, which is very generous, because we know those who are working in the medical field need extra special help. But for the rest of folks, what I like about Headspace is you can choose a 3-minute meditation, 5, 10. I don't know if there's one above 10.
I think they go through 15, 20 and a half an hour.
Oh, that's fantastic. That's fantastic. Yeah. So, you can just invest that much time if you're not too sure. And there's a free trial period, I believe. I went ahead and just took advantage of the free subscription. But it's nice. They kind of say, "Oh, good job. You've done this 15 days in a row." And they, there's some positive feedback that keeps you going. And sometimes when I wake up and I've got too much research to do and I feel like I still want to do some meditation, I'll choose the 3-minute one. Sometimes when I want to just have a better headspace, maybe I've had a harder day the day before, I know I'm going into a harder day, I'll choose a longer one. And when I open my eyes from that meditation, I really feel like I started new. Like I might wake up going, oh, and I open my eyes. Just the mind and the body connecting and calming is essential for this time.
Yeah. I'm a huge fan of Headspace as well. And if you happen to purchase it or you get a free subscription or whatever, there's a children's program. And they're wonderful. Again, they start at like 30 seconds or 20 seconds. So and they're story based, and they also have how to go to sleep and how to eat mindfully and how to walk mindfully. It's a wonderful program. There are lots of other ones for adults and kids as well. We're not paid by Headspace, it just happens to be one that the two of us really like. But there are lots of others out there, and it's a matter of finding what you like. And it doesn't have to be a formal meditation. Like Dr. Shaver said, simply going outside and noticing the green and breathing in the fresh air, that's good enough if that works for you. It's about what works for you and what calms you and your system down.
And if you have a religious practice and a spiritual practice, whether that's religious or not, I encourage you to participate in that and find your calm, your soul, your center. One of the ways I really recharge, I grew up in Southern California on the beach. Very lucky. My parents chose this sleepy beach town that all their friends made fun of because they thought it was the podunk, but it ended up being a great place to grow up. So that's the place I like to recharge. And currently you can't go on the beach, and I'm not traveling down there, and I can't go on the beach up here. So I have tried to find something similar. And so I just focus on nature in general, or take a walk along the Columbia River or the Willamette River, as we have rivers here in Portland, the city of bridges. So you know, take what you've got, see the silver linings in everything, and it works. I'm in a totally different mood, and my body just feels different after being outside.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
I noticed that, you know, as a parent, I noticed that our routines are completely upside down and backwards. And perhaps being able to focus more is definitely a part of that. But do you think that establishing new routines or finding new ways, even if it's temporary, is something that's helpful?
Absolutely, especially speaking from a child-centered point of view, it's so important to be able to have a routine, and that routine does not have to be the same every day, although it does help, but nor does it have to be the same routine that you did beforehand. I was getting my children up at 6:15 in the morning, I don't have to do that now. But getting up, making the coffee, getting the kids up even if it's at 10 o'clock, having them do their work, all of this helps them remember that there's something to do. But it also helps us structure our day. Most people don't do well with loosey-goosey, unstructured, and children certainly don't. They require that structure to feel stable. And oftentimes when we see children who act out, and who in fact can get violent, sometimes out of nowhere or unexpected, is because they're unsure. Having a routine, knowing what to expect, knowing what comes next and what came before and then what's going to occur, really just helps to calm them down. So yeah, that routine is so important.
I agree. And on the adult side too, you know, I always remind my patients that the body's hormones thrive on routine. Our thyroid, our sex hormones, our adrenal hormones especially. So adrenal is our stress hormones. And our normal hormones that wake us up in the morning come from the adrenal glands. And if we can, so for example, I can speak for myself. I wake up, I do my meditation, I go for a walk, I come home, I get the kettle on, I go upstairs on super low. I go upstairs, I take my shower, I get dressed for the day, I come downstairs and I have my tea. Like that is my morning ritual. And as Joseph Campbell, a noted author, put it, ritual and ceremony add meaning to life. So family rituals might be having dinner together on Sunday or pizza and puzzle on Friday. You know, those are rituals. Or depending on your culture, maybe, you know, having an altar and lighting a candle to a loved one who's passed. Ritual might be, you know, taking a look at a loved one's photo on your fireplace mantle, you know, and touching and kissing a loved one. You know, there's all sorts of ways we have ritual that bring meaning. And in this world that's so different and shifting in this 24/7 news cycle, it's nice to have meaning that's comforting and grounds us and allows us to know it's okay, this is familiar in this world that's so unfamiliar to us.
And unexpected, you know, this world is so, we're being thrown information 24/7 and we can't necessarily process it. So we can find comfort in those routines. And just to kind of go back to what you were saying regarding spiritually, and again, it doesn't have to be religious. Religious is just kind of a form and a structure and a philosophy behind this particular type of spirituality. But any sort of spirituality that brings us comfort, is, you know, in this time of chaos, because that's what we're in, this 24-hour news cycle and constantly being bombarded with information, some of which we may not understand, which stresses us out more, and some of which is conflicting. So anything that we can find that's healthy, that doesn't impede in our functioning, but that brings us comfort, and there goes those boosts of oxytocins and whatnot, that's so important to us. Because and again, I'm going to speak from the child-centered point of view, the calmer we are as parents, the calmer the children are. And that's, if I could give no other advice, that would be my number one piece of advice.
And the calmer we are, the calmer our pets are, and our
absolutely.
spouses,
Yes.
and our parents, and our neighbors.
Yes.
And you mentioned two words, comfort and healthy. And I want to touch on that from a nutrition point of view, because food choices can really help us during this time. So, not to get too technical, but we know that when the SARS CoV-2, so that's the actual virus that causes COVID-19, COVID 2019 disease in us, we know that there's a virus attached, and the virus causes this massive inflammation in our body. And as somebody with celiac disease or non-celiac gluten sensitivity, we know that in somebody who has celiac disease and non-celiac gluten sensitivity, there are increased inflammatory processes 100% of the time. It's just, unfortunately, the way this particular disease works in our body. So if we know that we have a higher rate of inflammation just by having two of these processes, and for those of you who just avoid gluten because you feel better, we don't know about that. And for those of you with wheat allergy, we don't know about that with the research. But for those with celiac disease and non-celiac gluten sensitivity, with this increased inflammation, what we need to do is choose healthy food choices most of the time. I tell folks to choose an 80-20 rule or a 90-10 rule, because if we're too strict and impose too much on us, it's somewhat human nature to just fall off the wagon and binge the other way and cause massive inflammation with different food choices. So the positive food choices are the anti-inflammatory diet. And if you've never heard of an anti-inflammatory diet, maybe you've heard of the Mediterranean diet. So much research on that, lowering diabetes, lowering cholesterol, lowering heart disease, weight loss, etc. We know that every individual fat cell, or what we call adipose cell, causes a little bit of inflammation. And in this COVID disease process, my friends and acquaintances who are ER docs are noticing that people who have larger bodies are doing less well when they come into the emergency room than people with less large bodies. So I do believe at health at any size, and at the same time, we do know that each individual fat cell creates inflammation. And there's research that shows even losing 5, 10, 15, 20 pounds has a protective effect against inflammation. So that's one thing we can do. And if you're like, oh, that's the least thing I need to do is go on a diet. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying choose healthier foods, this Mediterranean diet, these whole foods, fruits, vegetables, nuts, seeds, olives and olive oil, fish, low red meat, low processed foods, lower sugar, beans and legumes if you tolerate them, but really definitely veggies, fruit. And luckily, when you go through the grocery stores, there's still plenty of fresh fruit and vegetables. And those will yield you the most anti-inflammatory effects and help support your body's immune system to be more robust. There's not a whole lot of research on celiac disease and COVID, but there's some research on celiac disease and pneumonia that shows people with pneumonia might be at higher risk for that. And we know that pneumonia is part of what really kind of takes folks down really quite quickly in COVID. So if we can take what we know and hedge our bets against that by having celiac disease, and that research on non-celiac gluten sensitivity is there, but decrease inflammation, hedge our bets against that type of possibility of pneumonia, and then we can reduce our likelihood of doing poorly if we get this. The research shows 70 to 80% of us, I saw one that said 60, but the majority of us in any way, in the next 2 to 3 years will have COVID. Will we be one? Will I be one? Will you be one of those folks ending up in the ER? We don't know. But what I want people to do is do the best they can by reducing stress, what Dr. Abbe said, getting outside and creating routine and creating some sort of normalcy and structure, and choosing healthy foods so that we can last the longest and be the last ones to get it. And by then, we'll know what this is. We'll know how it affects the body, how we can treat it, how we can prevent it. So I just want everybody to be delayed and be the last ones when we know more about it.
And so what we're,
yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry, no, go, continue.
I just want to summarize by saying the 80-20 means 80% healthy foods and 20% treats. So if it's somebody's birthday, absolutely, gluten-free birthday cake is fine. Yeah, it has some inflammatory sugar and maybe some, if you're getting it from a bakery, some processed food in there or whatnot, or cookies and out of a package occasionally. I'm not saying don't do that, but just not with every meal or every day. Make that be the 20% or 10% that, you know, gluten-free bread, tortillas, English muffin, pies, cakes, donuts, like all of those should be a treat versus an everyday with every meal, and focus on whole foods 80%, 90% of the time.
And I wanted to piggyback on what you were saying on a few things. It's especially when it comes to information that we receive, don't let it overwhelm you, right? It's about kind of taking that information and putting it in a box in your head and just knowing it's there. We don't have to converse with it. We don't have to think about it and turn it over in our heads. I had an entire conversation with somebody recently about why we should get testing. And finally I turned to him and I said, wait a minute, this is beyond my purview. Go ask somebody who does public health. That's not your decision to make. That's not my decision to make. And it's outside both of our purviews. Let's hand it off to an expert in public health.
Yeah.
So take the information that we're giving to you. And if right now it's not sinking in, or it's getting you upset, or it's too much, just put it in that file and leave it there. And at another point in time, you can call upon it. The other thing that I wanted to kind of stress that Dr. Shaver was saying was, we are giving you guidelines, but we have to remember to be flexible about them, right? That's where the 80-20 or the 90-10, and if for you it starts out as 50-50, it starts out as 40-60, it's about being flexible in your thinking. The more rigid we are, the more stuck we get. Then we get into those, we must behave in this way, and we should be this way, and we're not, we get stuck, right? And that doesn't do us any good.
What do you need?
So
What are you gonna do?
Hold on one second, sorry. So important for us to remember that this is a process, and it's like Dr. Shaver said, this is not a diet. This is not about losing weight per se. It's about being healthy and building our body to be the best that we can be. In that vein, it doesn't happen overnight. And those overnight changes tend not to last. The changes that last, especially when it comes to eating, are slow and incremental and become part of our everyday. So again, if we start out at, 40 good, 60 bad, and then every day we inch a little bit more, even if it becomes like 39, 61, and we change it that way, that's okay, because the slower we can do it, the more long lasting we can do it, the better off we'll be. And to not think all or nothing, to be able to be flexible in our thinking is so important.
I agree, 100%, 100%. And that's why it's really important to be gentle with ourselves.
Yes.
And allow ourselves mistakes and acknowledge the mistake, say, oops, I made a mistake, let's move on, right? And try your best. I mean, that's the best we can do. And we're humans, we're beautifully, perfectly flawed, and that's who we are. And we just move forward, just keep moving forward.
I saw a recent anagram that said fail stood for first attempt in learning. And I thought that was brilliant.
I love that.
Yeah, isn't that nice? Because it's not a fail. I tried it and that didn't work. And now I know. And that's how, that's how we can look at it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I love that. I'm going to borrow that.
I didn't make it. It's all yours.
Another word you used was comfort. And I've read several articles that people are saying, I haven't had a craving for this food since I was 12 or 22 or 9. And that we're going back to these comfort foods that we might have had at a younger age. And I think that's okay. And that's where that 80-20 comes in. Like, I just want to make mac and cheese. Well, I personally am also dairy free. So I would make a dairy-free, gluten-free mac and cheese. And I put some chicken and some broccoli in it, and it was delicious. And I haven't made mac and cheese in probably 15 years or something like that. But I loved it. And that was and we had a salad with it. And I think we each my husband had a beer and a gluten-free beer. And that was fine. That was maybe part of my 20%. I mean, the broccoli and the salad kind of pushed it up there, but I mean, it's just mac and cheese. So I think that comfort is okay. There's also, so here in Portland, prior to COVID, we had 49 separate locations of 100% different eateries, 100% gluten-free, different locations of eateries where you could go and get something to eat. It might have been a cafe or a bakery or a food truck or a nice restaurant.
Wow.
And we currently have something like 30 still operational, including this one bakery that makes like real donuts that are like raised and then fried. And oh my God. Now, I personally don't feel well when I eat dairy, eggs, and sugar. And in these donuts are dairy, eggs, and sugar. And I've had 2 since COVID. My skin does not like that. There's other things in my body that doesn't like that. But I made that choice that was going to be part of it's probably part of my 5 or 10% in the week. I shared it with my husband. I didn't have that much, but I enjoyed every bite. And I said, wow, that's a flavor I haven't tasted in 20 years. Because I hadn't had a donut, like a real donut that long. So my point is, I think it's okay to seek comfort, in small amounts, through food, and the comfort otherwise is reaching out to family, reaching out to friends, being social, maybe joining a book club. I saw a philosophy club. There's games night that people are doing. They're group gaming online. I mean, there's so many ways we can find comfort.
Part of that, just, I guess, to go back to the seeking comfort in food, if you find yourself, I guess, seeking comfort in food so much so that that's your only comfort, or you're recognizing that it's impeding in your functioning, in the way your genes fit, and again, the way your skin is and all of that, that's not healthy. And we need to find other ways to seek out comfort. And there are other ways, and there are people like me who can certainly help. I don't know any psychologist now, including myself, who works with young children, who's not doing telepsychology. So there are lots of people who can, but I love the idea of going out and giving yourself a donut, a something. On Long Island, I don't think there are too many gluten-free bakeries, certainly none that I like as good as my own cooking. So I found a new recipe, and it was for a lemon pound cake, a lemon sour cream pound cake, and it was absolutely unbelievable. And I decided to make it in very small portions. So I could have one and then put the rest away, because if you have an entire plate out, you're going to eat the whole plate. So it's okay to have a donut and put the other donuts away. And if you make it, you have control over it. And if you don't make it and you buy it, that's okay too. I mean, I saw my mom is on here listening to me. And so my baking skills are totally from my mother. But she taught me that you can have a bite and walk away, or you can have a handful and walk away. And that just goes along with what Dr. Shaver is saying. Again, this goes back to being, not rigid and being flexible in your thinking. You're allowed to have comfort food. You're allowed to, and make it small. And that's okay. And learn how to be satisfied with a smaller amount.
Exactly.
because our food should not bring us, our food is also for health, and of course it should taste good, and of course it should allow us to function, but it shouldn't be our downfall, and it shouldn't stop us from functioning. Nor
Right.
should it be our only source of comfort and pleasure.
Right. And I also want to point on the guilt and shame portion of eating that. I mean, I talked with my husband before I bought this because I intentionally avoid those foods. And I said, look, I'm going to do this. I can't wait. I've heard great things about it. And so I made an intentional. I also happen, as a naturopathic physician, to have taken enzymes to help me break it down and anti-inflammatory. So I did all of this sort of collateral damage. And we made that one donut last 2 days among the two of us. So, but I had it with coffee and I felt like a normal person, and it was fun. It was fun. So that was just like a little bright spot in that day. And then I went about my day. And frankly, I think we went for an extra long walk too. Because that was definitely extra calories for us.
But not to get, like you said, with regard to the shame, it's okay. There is no shame.
Okay.
There is nothing that we're doing that's shameful. It's not wrong.
Yeah.
Again, first attempt in learning. I did it. It felt good. I'm going to continue to do it because it feels good and it's not impeding my functioning. And it's okay.
It's okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sounds like there can be a lot of joy found in some comfort. So
Yeah, it was. It was this little, it was, whereas if I had that donut every day, I could probably eat that thing and just not even think about it, not even taste it. But I tasted every bite, and I was appreciative of the hard work of these people who are going to work and interacting with the public during this time. And oh my God, I just was had so much gratitude around this. And then my husband's like, so are you going to do some more baking? And so I did. I made some gluten-free, dairy-free, egg-free, cane sugar-free, peanut butter, gluten-free oatmeal raisin cookies that were delicious and frankly pretty darn healthy. So those have lasted all week. So that's a special treat after dinner that we've been having.
So maybe some creativity in the kitchen is a good one too, to add to coping skills.
Absolutely. I recently pulled out some of my other flours that I have. So like you, I try and be healthy when I eat, but I made Wookiee cookies because it's Star Wars Day, and I have 4 kids. And even if I didn't, it's still Star Wars Day. So I made Wookiee cookies, but I substituted half the butter for peanut butter, and I substituted half the flour for almond flour. They came out awesome. And I mean, there's chocolate chips in there, but it's okay. Again, I had one.
Because chocolate chips, hello.
How would you not? But I didn't. I had 2, but that's it. I had 2. I walked away. I felt good. And so the more you cook and bake, and I have to say what I found, especially within gig, but the more you cook and bake, the more you understand not only the chemical reactions that occur within cooking and baking, so it's not as intimidating, but you learn how to substitute things. What I love about gig is that people are so willing and kind. Nothing is proprietary. Oh, here, let me show you. Oh, your child is, I get calls from my pediatrician all the time. I used to get calls from them all the time. We have another person who was diagnosed, and I would say, come to my house and tell me what your kid likes, and I will have all of it. And the way I do it for them is I have everything boxed, so you can buy it in the supermarket, but you don't have to, right? If you want to know how to make pretzels, and if you want to know how to make donuts or how to make muffins or how to make, I can show you how to do it for real, and I can go through all the different flours with you. But gig has provided that as well. This is such a warm group, and you should not be afraid to rely on other people and to ask for help. I don't know how to do this. How do I know? There are people who know, who are more than willing. And that sense of community, again, is so important with regard to decreasing stress and making you feel like you're not alone, finding your tribe.
Oh, absolutely. As humans, we are tribal people. We need to find our community. And reaching out and asking for help in all ways of life makes other people feel important. Oh, I can help you. I have something to offer. That's huge. It makes all of us feel important and interesting and necessary. So I encourage everybody to reach out and seek help, whether that's in a recipe or any other part of life. If you're feeling lonely, or seek help from professionals if you need help from professionals.
Mm-hmm. Friends and your tribe can also help with regard to figuring out what you like to do. So there's an online group that just started that is teaching people how to sew flowers on their clothing. You know, all of these things are out there.
Right.
What's the harm in trying?
I know someone who recently joined online Overeaters Anonymous because this was triggering something back from college for her. You know, the resources online are multitudinous. Yeah. And if you can't find it, ask somebody else to help you find it.
Sometimes being smart doesn't mean that you know the information. It means you know how to find the information. So if that means that you're smart enough to ask somebody for help, that's okay too.
I'm going to jump in here now, and I just want to thank you both for what a great conversation.
Thanks, Dean.
I thought this would be a great time to maybe open it up for anybody who has questions or anything they wanted to ask. Let me see if there's a way, if anybody wanted to jump in and ask any questions. If you want to raise your hand, I could unmute you, or I could unmute everyone. And
people also could put their questions to Jeannie in the chat, either on bottom or on top is a chat next to participants is a chat bubble, so you can put it there, and then Jeannie could let you know. She could unmute you that way.
Great idea, Deena. And if we don't have any questions yet, we can keep on talking. I just wanted to make sure we were able to get some questions in case anybody had any.
I'd love to hear from everybody else, you know, maybe what their biggest challenge being gluten-free has been, but also maybe what their biggest win has been in being gluten-free during this time. I'm very interested in that, and seeing how other people are living this who are gluten-free. I'd be very interested in hearing that, even if it's just a comment or a funny story or something like that. I'm on Facebook, and I belong to a Buy Nothing group in my neighborhood, and there's Buy Nothing groups all over the United States, neighborhood by neighborhood. And there was a gal who said, my household is 100% gluten-free, and I have some gluten-free sourdough starter. And I was thrilled. And so I just received that yesterday, and I'm now venturing into and distracting myself by reading all of this about how do you feed sourdough and what do you do with it. And, because I've heard so many of my friends cooking sourdough and sharing sourdough starter, but it wasn't gluten-free. So I'm venturing in there. I'm sticking my foot in it.
My mom and I actually were just having that conversation, and we were talking about other things that we could do because I don't know anyone. My mom and I mean, we both live on Long Island, but we're not too close to each other. And my parents are in a more vulnerable age bracket. So we really haven't seen each other at all. I don't have a sourdough starter. I don't know anyone who has a gluten-free sourdough starter. So what else can we do? And what's your starter? And how do you do it? And so I guess my biggest challenge was, I'm Jewish, and we had online, my rabbi's wife, my Rebbitzin, had a cooking class for challah. You can't really braid gluten-free challah because the gluten provides the elasticity.
Elasticity, right.
So I didn't go, and I make challah in my bread maker, and it's not the same, and it doesn't taste as good. So that was, And isn't that wonderful that that's my biggest challenge, trying to figure out this bread and to stop baking? As my daughter said, Ma, you're baking so much. I don't need my cookies, whatever. But yeah.
I'm not sure if you could see it in the chat, but Jenny mentions that, talking about gluten-free baking, she's having a hard time finding gluten-free flours and ingredients, and looking for recommendations. I'll put in the chat for everyone a link to our to a page on our website where a lot of the companies that we certify, in case anyone doesn't know, we're the organization that does the certified gluten-free that you see in a lot of packaged products. A lot of companies are shipping directly that you might normally find in a supermarket. So I will put a link in the chat. You might be able to find something that you're looking for directly from companies.
Yeah, that might be the easiest, to go directly from the company instead of trying, to go to the supermarket.
Here in Portland, we have some local sort of healthier food stores, and then, the chain Whole Foods and that sort of thing. Some people find Safeway to be a fair, they carry different brands than, so your conventional grocery stores can carry different brands. But also there's a natural grocer, natural grocers, but grocery outlet where they sell short date, I think it's called, meaning something that might expire in 3 to 4 months, and they get in boxes and boxes of these. But they carry some really interesting brands I've never seen anywhere, never heard of, and some of which are certified gluten-free. So because it's a national chain, there are local franchisees that own each, so they're locally owned and operated. But I find they have very interesting, and occasionally I'll find something like Pamela's or King Arthur, or some very well-known brands. But if not online, some of those. That being said, that does mean venturing out. But I go shopping once every 2 weeks, and then I have my grocery delivered by my produce delivered by Imperfect Produce, no affiliation. But if you have a friend who gets it, they can hook you up with a discount. They get a discount on their next order, and you get a discount on your first order. But I get my fresh produce, and you can choose organic, but they also have some gluten-free items. You can choose gluten-free in those, and you might recognize some brands. They have dry goods as well that they're now delivering.
I know in New York, or certainly downstate New York, supermarket shopping is very difficult. I don't know how it is where everybody else is, or where you are, Dr. Shaver, but people wait online for a very long time to get into the supermarket. There are services. I'm so impressed you had said that sometimes you get things delivered. We have to wait online, and there's like a 5-minute window at, midnight midnight or whatever, that you can get a spot for 2 weeks from now to get your groceries delivered. So it's very difficult here.
Well, you have a different population density than Portland.
Right.
Little old Portland, yeah.
But I think that being able to go on the websites and order directly, and getting your fruit delivered or your vegetables delivered. I get my milk delivered, my milk and eggs. I have an old-fashioned milkman, and I have a, the box outside and whatnot.
That's nice.
It's wonderful. And it's really been a lifesaver to know that you have that option, and that you can do that. And somebody, Lita, had written that she found it easier and less stressful to not have to pack lunch, and to just know that the food is there. I think that's great. Yeah,
and Diana mentions Bob's Red Mill. We all know Bob's Red Mill, and you can order online from them. Mm-hmm. And she also recommends nuts.com, which is, I have found a safe way to order nuts and seeds. So nuts.com, again, no affiliation, and then also King Arthur. I'm assuming that King Arthur you could order online. They're big enough, I'd imagine you could do that. And they have flours, sort of big flours, but also prepackaged mixes as well.
Mm-hmm. If you can tolerate nuts and you can tolerate dairy, Pamela's sells in like the super bags, and that's a wonderful flour also. And she has different flours. She has cake flour, and she has bread flour and baking flour. It's a little heartier, and it does have dairy and nuts in it. But that's another good flour, and they come in the industrial size bags.
Sue Kahn says she's been trying to use a starter to make gluten-free, dairy-free, egg-free bread using some of the gluten-free cookbooks as a new hobby. Oh, I'd love to hear more about that. Jean, is there a way to unmute Sue Kahn? I would love to hear more about that.
I'm working on it.
Ma, unmute yourself.
Or unmute yourself if that's possible, if we haven't.
I just did. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, Mom.
Hello.
Tell us a little bit more.
Nicole Hun has a gluten-free baked spread.
She's a gluten-free on a shoestring gal.
Yes.
She is, but she also has one that is just breads. And these starters, you start and you can put the bread together and leave it in the fridge for 5 days before you actually bake it.
Nice.
No dairy, no egg, gluten-free.
That's up my alley.
And her starters, Nicole's starters, they're not massive quantities. So you make the starter and you use the starter instead of keeping it growing and then use some of the starter as a mother for the other, for your new starter. So you can do it as you go. And if you make the starter and you leave it in the fridge and then you use the starter, that's okay too. So it's not as fragile as some of the other starters might be if you get nervous. And I find Nicole Hahn's Gluten-Free on a Shoestring to be very, very user-friendly.
Yeah.
It's not an intimidating cookbook. I have the CIA gluten-free cookbook in my house, and I just look at it and I go, oh, that looks nice, and I put it back on the shelf because it's way too intimidating. But not Nicole Hahn. It's really more of a teaching cookbook, and she explains things very gently and very simply so that you can use it. But like my mom said, these starters are dairy-free and they're egg-free and gluten-free, and you can just put it in the fridge until you're ready to use it.
Yeah, and I think her gluten-free sourdough starter actually, it is online, and we posted it on the GIG Facebook page just a few days back, so people can find it there.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah.
Hi, ladies. This is, hello.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Hi, this is Natalie Castro. I'm the branch manager for South Florida. So I wanted to thank you guys so much for this talk, because actually tonight was supposed to be our meeting, and we have a lot of our South Florida members on right now. So I wanted to say hello to them, but I think
hello, South Florida.
it's such a great opportunity to get together and, you know, from across the nation and be able to share in the support group same fashion. So I think the topic that you guys hit on is so nice to hear from other speakers, and how important it is during this time to have each other to bounce back off of, because we're all going through it together, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So is South Florida sort of like Fort Lauderdale and below, or?
Yes, Miami, Fort Lauderdale, Florida Keys,
yeah,
Broward, Palm Beach, all of that.
Yeah.
But yes, Miami-Dade did get hit pretty hard, and now we're starting to open up the county again. They're looking to do that next week. So, so some people have had challenges getting some ingredients in the grocery stores, but for the most part, it's been okay. And I guess now is the challenge of eating out. I think today we had a conversation about being able to, you know, these restaurants that are doing the takeout, but now you can't speak to them. And if you don't have 100% gluten-free restaurants, then the issue comes in with how do you communicate your allergy?
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. No, I am acutely aware of how special Portland, Oregon is with its close to 50. I hope they survive 100% gluten-free places where you can just walk in. So once this all lifts and you're looking for a place to travel and you're itching to travel, come to Portland. I keep a running list of all of the gluten-free bakeries and the restaurants, and wow. I keep them, and I have them in my monthly email that goes out with a little blurb. This place is vegan, this place is paleo, you know, what have you, so that
I actually have to thank you because I did visit Portland about 2 years ago and I used your list. And that's another reason why these support groups are so great, because it's what we rely on, right, when we travel.
Oh,
So it was, I'm 100% sure it was your list now that you said that. But yes, it's so helpful to be able to rely on that and knowing that the cities have lists that we can go to and use it. But Portland is so beautiful.
And in South Florida, don't forget to go to Bolé, because Bolés are certified by our gluten-free food service. So
yes, they are.
Nice and safe. Everything you get is going to be all nice and safe without having to worry about the communication.
Awesome.
Jean, I also noticed that on the chat function, so for everybody who has a PC, it's down below. If you kind of hover your mouse down below, there's a chat function and with a little sort of like thought bubble or conversation bubble. If you click on that, I think the second comment, Jean posted the link to all of the certified gluten-free special offers that GIG has. So some of these certified gluten-free businesses have special offers when you purchase online. I noticed that, Jean, I posted that maybe last week. Yeah.
It is, and we're updating that list all the time. So, you know, keep your eyes peeled and support the companies who are working so hard to keep our food safe.
So hard, working so hard. Yeah.
I see that somebody mentioned, oh wait, I just lost it. That one of the things they found is some funny celiac things on funny celiac Instagram accounts, and it made me realize, you know, finding a chance to laugh sometimes is good too.
They're the funniest things. They're like, how you wash your hands, and it's like the 20 seconds, and it's like, no, waiter, I can't eat gluten. No, not even a little bit. And it's like a bunch of stuff like that. And it's just like so funny.
It's good to be able to find that humor. It's so important.
Yes. Yeah. And even if you are watching something silly or something you might not usually watch, if it makes you laugh, that's good.
Mm-hmm.
So I encourage people to laugh. It's so good for our mental health, but it's also really good for our bodies to laugh. There's a lot of research on laughter as medicine. There is a whole movie about a physician named Patch Adams who did clownish things and made his patients laugh and ended up having a whole retreat center. But that's the extreme, but laughing is so important. So if you can find anything with a silver lining, focus on that and do engage in laughter.
I realize that we have come to the 9 o'clock hour. 9 o'clock here on the East Coast, 6 o'clock there on the West. Just wanted to see if there was anything else anyone wanted, any other last minute questions?
Cynthia's here. Hi, Cynthia.
Hi. Haven't seen you for a while.
I know, it's been forever. Your hair's long too.
Yes. And I don't live far from Portland anymore.
Really? I don't think I knew that. That's exciting.
Chehalis. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Jeannie, tell everybody about the Hero campaign.
Oh my goodness. That is exactly what I wanted to say is, you know, so much conversation was about comfort, which reminds me of joy. And here at GIG, we've had so much joy in the past week because we have, for Celiac Awareness Month, focused on giving back to the essential workers who are out there every day. And whether it's driving a truck or working in a supermarket or working on the COVID unit of a hospital, there's a lot of people out there who really need a special treat and a little recognition right now. And we've encouraged our community to nominate a hero, whoever it may be, and we'll send them a special little treat from one of our certified gluten-free companies or bakeries. And so far we've had just a phenomenal response from both just our community in general and from all the companies who are working with us to send out. Everyone's getting something else, getting something different, a little treat for everybody. And it has brought us so much joy here at GIG to be able to do that. because, you know, I think focusing on helping people and doing something kind, you know, helps you get through the day. So anyone who would like, go to our website, gluten.org/heroes, hero, and you can nominate a hero. And it can be anyone. It can be anyone who's doing something really special. We've had students who are making masks, and you know, people from different trades, and healthcare workers, and people who need a treat. Because a lot of people in the healthcare field might be getting, you know, pizza delivered, boxes of donuts, things they can't touch if they're gluten-free. So we're doing something special for those who are gluten-free and deserve a little recognition.
Awesome.
Nice. That's great. You know, and giving back really helps us feel part of the community. Yeah, volunteering and helping others is and giving back. That's fantastic. So thank you for doing that.
Yeah.
Well, thank you all for being here tonight. I'm so happy. We had such a nice turnout of people, and this was a really fun thing to do. Our first time doing our educational support series online. So we'll be doing this again. I hope you all come back and join us.
Thank you.